मॉर्निंग पलक। Good morning, one and all. Is it audible? Yes, no. Can unmute and
Yes, sir.
speak. Thank you. Thank you, Samruddh. And any clarifications, any questions to BS Narayan Center for Advanced Learning and Software Development, you can communicate. Anything you want to know? Is it audible, right? Any clarifications? Respond. You are all there?
Very good morning, Shivram sir.
Good morning, Rajat sir. Thank you for joining. Rajat, are you there? Good morning, Akshay.
Hi, Sarki. Hello.
You Akshay? Yeah, Mr. Ravi Kumar, already I have unmuted. Want to speak? You can speak, Ravi. Ravi Kumar, are you there? Yeah, good morning, all of you. Is it audible? Can you confirm anyone? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir,
Yeah,
you're audible.
thank you.
You're audible, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, good morning, all of you. Welcome to the Ask Me Anything series, episode 1, Industry Expert Interaction. Welcome to BS Narayan Center for Advanced Learning and Software Development. We started the center to make the students to build a strong learning and development environment in advanced computer science domain to promote innovation towards betterment of the society. So it started in the year 2019. We have conducted more than 100 plus training programs, 25 plus workshops, and we are conducting one-to-one trainings and industry training programs to all the students and all the learners all over India. So any students can join our center to learn, to upgrade, to update. And we are providing summer and winter internships to students, to all the students who are interested to work on real-time projects. We are tie up with almost 20 plus companies, 100 plus industry experts. They are all ready to interact with all of us to make you people to learn, to know which technology is important, which technology makes you, or which technology easy to get job, all those things. So in that thing, we arranged this Ask Me Anything series. Today we are going to interact with Mr. Akshay PK. Welcome, Akshay, from BS Narayan Center for Advanced Learning and Software Development. Akshay.
Thank you, SRK.
Yeah. So let me introduce to our speaker, Akshay. Akshay is working at Backbase, Netherlands. He is working as a DevOps system engineer, DevOps, and he loves to teach. He loves to train the students on the various technologies like cloud, DevOps, and already he impacted more than 40,000 plus students and industry professionals. We are all very lucky to have Akshay with us today. So feel free to interact with Akshay. Anything, any clarifications, any doubts related. Pardon? Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Any doubts, any clarifications related to cloud, DevOps, or any other technologies, few related to that, you can interact with Akshay. This is not a webinar, my dear friends. This is an interaction with expert. That is why we titled as Ask Me Anything. So you can ask questions to Akshay. He is going to explain, he is going to tell, he is going to make it clear what is industry expecting from all of us. So how to prepare to get our dream job. So Akshay used to say, start learning every day one thing, one topic. You're going to learn 365 days, 300 and plus topics. So that you can learn better. So he used to tell that always to us. So Akshay, welcome, and stage is yours. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, SRK. That was very kind of you. So guys, it's around 7:30 over here in the morning. I just woke up at least half an hour back, and I had this conversation with SRK. So let's get started. Let's do this. You know what? Just to make it more interactive, I'm gonna go ahead and turn on my video. Let me know once you guys are able to see me. Yeah. Hi
Yes,
everyone.
we can see
Yeah.
you, Akshay.
Perfect. Okay. Cool. Sorry about the red light in the background. That's just for the TV effects, you know. But anyways. Okay, let's get started. And you know what? I'm gonna do this in a two-part session. So I'm gonna first go ahead and talk to you about the importance of cloud and DevOps, right? And then I have a nice PPT ready for that, and you will get to know the seriousness of why we need people in this space. And then later, I'm gonna just leave it to you guys to ask any question in regards to IT, about the IT industry and how your career would possibly like to go. I know that in the audience we have today mechanical engineers as well as EC department engineers, right? So if you guys at a later point of time or at any point of time in your career would like to know anything about IT, this is the time that you ask those questions. If there are any questions that you have in regards to the IT industry, you could ask that question during the Q&A session. So please don't forget to ask your questions and don't keep it to yourself. Be as interactive as possible. But just for the next 20, 25 minutes, we are going to talk about the importance of cloud and DevOps. And for that, I have a nice PPT ready. So you guys should also be able to see my screen. And I have
Yes,
this nice
sir.
presentation over here for you. So everyone, maybe you guys don't have an idea about what cloud and DevOps is all about and how do we do it, but that is for later. I'll anyways tell you what it is today. But then, why do you need it is the most important aspect. So let's first understand the why aspects. But before that, why me? Why I am the right resource person to talk about this is because I have these industry certifications with me. I have taken the last 4 years of my career, building my career in such a way that, right now I'm in Amsterdam. I have shifted away from India. I have gone through three different organizations in the last 4 years, and I've seen a lot of industry scenarios. And specifically in this space of cloud and DevOps, it's huge. The opportunities are plenty, and you'll see in a moment in the next few slides as to why do I say that the opportunities are plenty. So on the left side, you have my industry certifications. On the right side, you have my industry experience. And possibly I'm gonna go to many other organizations in the future. And if you guys want to stay in touch, you could always, follow me on LinkedIn, and you can see all of the different posts that I put. And just follow along in this journey of cloud and DevOps. So, you have so many different cloud-based platforms. Why do we have so many cloud-based platforms or cloud computing platforms? And why is it growing at an exponential rate over the last few years? The reason why it's growing at an exponential rate is because first, let's understand as to what cloud computing is all about. Then I'll give you the answer for the first question. So cloud computing is all about an organization setting up its own data centers and then providing a lot of application services, infrastructure services, and platform services over that infrastructure, but probably for you to just interact through a website, just using your mouse and keyboard and just going ahead and doing some different configurations and setting up the infrastructure so that you can go ahead and deploy your applications. So there are a lot of application related services too when you work with cloud-based platforms. So at the end of the day, what you have to take away from this is a cloud-based platform is nothing but, for example, when you take AWS, they have their data centers set up across 20 to 21 different regions across different continents. And then they are providing a platform which is nothing but a web-based application called aws.amazon.com, where you can go ahead and access all of these infrastructure related services, platform services, and so on, and go ahead and use this to probably create the infrastructure for your applications. So that's pretty much what a cloud computing platform is all about. You directly interact with different services where the underlying infrastructure of those services are taken care of by the cloud provider. But why do we see the emergence and why do we see a lot of startups and who are born and brought up in the cloud, and why do we see them grow at an exponential rate is because in the last 4 or 5 years we have seen so many organizations move their applications from an on-premise infrastructure where they had their own servers or their own racks in their organization where they were maintaining the server by themselves, which was too tedious, too pricey, and they were spending a lot in terms of capital expenditure, and they wanted to go ahead and spend more for ongoing or operational expenditure. So the cost model of moving to the cloud is one of the benefits of moving to the cloud. So that's why you see a lot of organizations move their on-premise infrastructure all the way to the cloud. And that's why you see so many organizations who are right now in the phase of migration, or you would see so many organizations who are just born and brought up in the cloud. And because of that, because of a lot of organizations starting to employ cloud-based platforms and so on, you do see a ton of openings in the space of cloud and DevOps. Yesterday, there was this article that was released by NASSCOM, and NASSCOM stated that we need 25 million people in the space of cloud and DevOps by the year 2025. So just think about it. And there was another article by Forbes that mentioned that there is 330% increase just in this year in the space of cloud and DevOps. So there is a lot of scope in this space. We just need a lot of really good engineers who are expertise in this space of cloud and DevOps. So there are a lot of openings, and in a moment you will also see the salary structure and all that, so that you guys get an overview about this is one space in IT which is growing at an exponential rate right now, and we need a lot of people. So what is cloud and what is DevOps? I just mentioned a little bit about what cloud is. So let's leave cloud with that, just that definition, that there is an infrastructure over which, a cloud-based platform like AWS or Azure is giving a platform for you to use just by using your mouse and keyboard to interact with a web page. But DevOps, on the other hand, brings together the development aspects and the operational aspects. So if suppose, let's say that there is a developer and this developer is developing an application, and this application is hosted on a source code repository like GitHub or so on, how do you take that source code through a process to different environments? And those environments or that infrastructure could be the cloud. So that's all about DevOps. So you take your code, you go ahead and package your code, you test your code, you can go ahead and probably do some security scannings and all that. And then you could take your code as an artifact to different environments. And these environments could be in the cloud. So very simple. Cloud is all about the infrastructure. DevOps is all about a process or a mindset to take that application code through a process to your environments which are in the cloud. So there is a lot of tools that are involved in the DevOps space. So do think about that. And what is the average salary of a person working in India and abroad in this space? I would say the average salary of a person working in India as a fresher, have trained people to also get 14 lakhs per annum as a fresher. I've also trained people to get all the way from 7 lakhs and upwards, but the average salary, if you ask, when it comes to service-oriented companies, is around the 4.5 to 5 lakhs per annum, which is still a really good starting salary considering the development aspects or the software engineer aspects where you get around 3 to 3.25 and so on. But a person working abroad in the European region, you get around 55 lakhs per annum. I'm just converting it for you guys. In the US side of things, you get 1 crore for a year. So that's how the market is, in the space of cloud and DevOps. So where should I start learning? Any prerequisites? There is zero prerequisites. That's why this lecture is not inclined towards people in the computer science or IT domain and so on. This lecture is inclined towards people in mechanical and electronics domain who do also have an interest and a zeal for learning something like cloud and DevOps, So there is no prerequisite, but it's good if you already know a little bit of Linux in terms of operating system and Linux-based commands. It's also a little bit good if you are able to understand how IPv4 and how networking works on a basic level. If you do know that, it's great. Even if you don't know that, it's fine. But there is no prerequisites per se in terms of starting to learn about these cloud-based platforms. So where should you start learning? You could contact BSNR Center for a course on cloud computing. Okay. So since these questions are out of the way and you guys have at least a 5 to 10% overview into what this space is all about, let's go through some other facts. So in terms of the market scope, like I said, in the year 2021, we had close to 330% increase in job opportunities. So I would like all of you guys to take a moment to check Naukri, LinkedIn Jobs, Monster Jobs, um, InstaHire, and AngelList for all of these job openings. And at that point of time, I would like you to take a look at the roles and responsibilities for each and every job designation, because at one point of time in your career, right after your college, you're going to go through these platforms. So when you go through these platforms, I would like you to take a look at it right now, rather than once you're in your final year and you are searching for a job. That's where a lot of people make mistakes. The exposure that is being set for a particular student by interacting with people like us, we give that exposure at a much earlier stage so that you don't go ahead and make a mistake during your final year at that point of time to go ahead and refresh your profile or furnish your profile and go ahead and search for a job. You got to do that at a earlier stage. So right now I'm telling you, use LinkedIn really well. Okay? So since we have around 330% increase in job opportunities in the year 2021, we just don't have that many experienced professionals in the space who can contend or upskill or reskill themselves, with the market needs and demands. So that's one of the reasons why we would like people to learn things the right way. Any technology that you study, any subject that you study it the right way, go through the basics, and then go through some intermediate concepts, and then go through some advanced concepts. So you can employ this strategy for literally anything that you learn over the next few years. So it has become more of a need for a software engineer, a data engineer, a machine learning engineer, even an electronics engineer, or a person who's working with IoT devices, or a person who's working with microprocessors and microcontrollers. It has become a need in the market for them also to learn about the space of cloud and DevOps, to have a better market value because it's an added advantage. I have a twin brother who is working in Japan for Nissan, and he is from an electronics background. He's from ECE background, and he is working with Microsoft Azure. So you have to think to yourself that literally every single domain right now in IT, irrespective of whatever designation you are in, cloud and DevOps has to be learned. So cloud platforms do encapsulate all of the job domains in IT, and DevOps is something that can never be separated from the cloud. So if you are at a later point of time going for your placements and you do get placed in an IT organization as a cloud engineer, think to yourself that a cloud engineer works with DevOps and a DevOps engineer works on cloud-based platforms. So they go hand in hand. You can never separate these two. So in terms of bridging the gap, like I said, there is a huge gap between academia and market, and you will see that in literally every field of IT or every domain, So whether it be ECE or EEE or mechanical or IT or CSE, there is a huge gap between academia and market. And to bridge that gap, we have BSN Narayanan Center and so many other training institutes where you can go ahead and learn some extra concepts in terms of upskilling yourself for the market needs. That's one of the reasons why Infosys has their training program in Mysore. That's one of the reasons why TCS has their training program in Thiruvananthapuram. That is also one of the reasons why Wipro has their training center in Bhubaneswar. The reason is because there's a huge gap between academia and market. And I always believe that college education is something that should be revamped. It's something that should be changed, but it's never changed. So it takes a lot of time to do that. So in that way, these people are thriving in the market. You have so many training centers, you have so many different training programs provided by online platforms. Why do these people come into play? Because there is this huge gap. And to bridge this gap, we need highly skilled freshers who can compete with 2 to 3 years of industry experience professionals. So we need freshers to upskill themselves in recent technologies such as cloud and DevOps. It's just one of the recent technologies to automate everything that is possibly done manually. We need freshers to learn during their second year and third year and final year of college, inclined towards the industry rather than just mugging up stuff and writing your exams. We need freshers to be more creative because I always believe that creativity is skilled in all of us because we are told to learn something only this particular way. We can learn something in multiple different ways, and that's when creativity comes into play, but that's not being done. So we would like freshers to upskill and reskill themselves to make themselves ready for the market. And the earlier do you do it, the more competition there's going to be. And the earlier you do it, you can demand your own salary in the market. Even as a fresher, you can go to Infosys, Wipro, or any other organization or any startup and go ahead and demand for 7 lakhs or 8 lakhs, and they would be willing to give it to you if you are able to justify their questions and answers and so on. So this is what I want all of the freshers to do. I'm giving you the exposure, I'm giving you the um, insight into how the industry is right now. And I would like all of you guys to go ahead and take a moment, think about this, because it's a very serious topic. No one puts it in this serious way. No one gives you that fear of working in the industry. Every single day, you got to do the hard work. It's not just doing the hard work on a Monday and then relaxing for the entire week. No, it's consistent hard work over a period of time, over a period of a year, where you can do great things for yourself. But always ask yourself, why are you doing this? why am I doing all of this? Why did I study for 14 hours a day every single day for 2.5 years? And why am I right now over here in Amsterdam earning close to 55 lakhs per annum? The reason is because I want a better lifestyle for my family, for a family that I'm going to have one day in the future. I want a better lifestyle for my kid. So you got to always find your reasons. You got to always find your purpose, and you have to work towards that. I'm pretty sure that none of you guys are going to think along these lines right now, but 2 years or 3 years down the line, you will have to have an independent career for yourself. So always think about the how factor of how you can bridge the gap by working on the theoretical aspects, practical aspects, certification exams, and project aspects. Any topic that you take, go ahead and study the what, why, and how aspect of that topic, know 80% of the topic, and then go ahead and move on to the next topic. That's what I would like all of you guys to do. I don't want you to just know the what aspects, because college only teaches the what aspect. The how aspect is not inclined to the industry, and the why questions no one asks. So when it comes to certifications, there are a ton of industry renowned certifications that you guys can take during your third year or final year or during your initial year of work and so on. These are industry renowned certifications, the one that I did before, if you had seen my profile in the second slide. So the reason why you need to do it during your third year and final year of college is because people who are in the industry do already have it. So if you are more proactive rather than reactive, you can go ahead and do this during your third year of college. I tell you that there are easy certifications, but those easy certifications itself takes 1.5 months to 2 months for you to complete. And there is a set way for preparing for a certification. You can't just go ahead and walk right in and clear an exam. It's not going to work that way. It's not like your college exams and so on. It's not something that you study in the last moment. It's systematic, organized approach in terms of how you go ahead and prepare yourself for a certification. So if you do it during your third year and final year, during your placements, you will come first. You will be filtered first because you already have the certification. But each and every certification exam has a cost associated with it. So I would like all of you guys to take a moment to also think about the cost. If you're able to afford it, well and good. If your college is able to do it for you, amazing. If you are doing it for yourself and at a later point of time, getting more returns, it's amazing. And in a moment, I'll show you in the next few slides what are some of the cloud certifications that you can take. So you have to take the time to do one. It makes you stand apart in a crowd of freshers because think about it, mechanical department, EC department, IT, CSE, literally everyone goes for placements. Core companies, according to me, I don't know how it is in your college, but when I was in 2017, 18 and so on, core companies were very less. And when core companies are less, maybe probably just a few people, 7 or 8 or 10 selected individuals do get placed in a core company. But rest of the people who are, in different departments do also go ahead and attend IT related campus placements by studying one programming language or two programming languages and so on. So what I would like to tell you guys is, what if you already studied for a certification? What if you already got the certification in your hands and you go ahead and ask an organization to give you a job? They will for sure do that. So always remember this, certifications are great, but then there is also one more aspect to this, which is nothing but the practical aspects and the project aspect. So other than doing a certification, you guys should also do a lot of practicals. You have to go ahead and do a real-time project, and that's why I'm here. I could share a ton of use cases with SRK, and he could share it across with you guys. Doing projects are really amazing. You get to know what troubleshooting is all about. You get to know how to find the solution for different problems. So please do think about this. It's very, very important. And now I'll take you through the set of certifications that we have on AWS, Azure, and GCP. And then we can go ahead for some facts, and then I'll open it up for Q&A. So these are some of the certifications of AWS. We start off with Cloud Practitioner, which is one of the foundational certifications that everyone takes. And then the level of difficulty increases when you go for Solutions Architect Associate, for Developer Associate, SysOps Administrator Associate. And then you have 2 professional certs, and you have 6 specialty certifications, which are really pricey. I'll tell you the price, 8,000, 12,000, 27,000 for each and every attempt. It's really pricey. So you have to be excellent in terms of your preparation. But once you get this, you can put it on your resume, you can put it on your LinkedIn profile, and you can go ahead and ask for campus placements. And it's an excellent field, man. Like I said, there is no prerequisite for this. Even if you don't know Linux and basics of networking, it's totally fine. You can still go ahead and learn from excellent course authors on Udemy, or you can contact BSN Narayanan Center to go ahead and give you that insight. And we are going to conduct a workshop for AWS Cloud Practitioner soon, and stay tuned for the details for that. In terms of Microsoft Azure, also, you have so many different certifications. I'm not going to walk you through everything, but there are some foundational certs, there are some expert level certifications. So I would highly encourage you guys to take a look at that. And in terms of Google Cloud Platform, they have less number of certifications in the cloud compared to AWS and Azure, because I always believe that Google Cloud Platform is a kid trying to grow up, but they will never come at par as to where AWS and Azure is in terms of the market scope. So I would like all of you guys to also take a look at Google's Associate Cloud Engineer certification. It's a really nice exam. I wrote it long back. It was one of the toughest ones. So it's an amazing exam to just walk into and clear it. So these are some of the certifications that we have on the cloud in regards to AWS, Azure, and GCP. And the new normal in the market right now is we want people who are multi-cloud professionals. We want people who can work on AWS. We want people who can work on Azure. We want people who can work on GCP at the same time. We want people who can also do DevOps along with these cloud-based platforms in the same time. So which means the more pressure is on you guys when you are in college, because the industry is growing at an exponential rate, but you guys in college is only over here. You guys are here, but the industry is like going somewhere out of my screen. So because it's growing at an exponential rate. So in terms of bridging that gap, you have to spend 1 hour every day or one concept a day, like SRK said. You have to spend one concept a day, 365 concepts for the year, which means it's inclined towards your certification goals. It's 4 certifications for 1 year. I usually do 4 for the year, or I usually do 4 in a month if I'm crazy. But yeah, it depends on how experienced you are, and you have to take the time to learn the basics, and then you could go at a much faster pace. You have to read, write, and remember, which means you have to read a topic, write your own notes, and the next day morning, you can wake up and you can revise everything and remember most of the concepts. So that's another strategy that I use when I prepare for any exam. So let's take a look at some facts. I'm not joking. This is from 2020. Top paid IT certifications. You have Google Cloud Professional Cloud Architect with the highest salary of 175,000 US dollars. You have Solutions High Tech Associate, 149,000 US dollars. The reason why I put this in dollars is because I want to make it clear that this is a chart from the US market. But when it comes to the India market, as a fresher, like I said, you can get 4.5 onwards. As a 2-year experienced person, you should have reached 10 lakhs per annum. As a 3-year experienced person, you should have reached 15. I'm not joking. You should have reached 15 plus. Okay. The reason why I say 15 plus, it can be a dream for a lot of people. 15 plus is like at least 1 lakh per month. And you don't see any service oriented company give you 15 lakhs per annum. You don't see that. You don't see Infosys, Wipro, TCS, Accenture, Cognizant give you that. That's why I'm going to request all of you to move to startups. Forget about the big MNCs. The more flexibility, the more freedom that you have on your hands, the maximum performance you can give. So that maximum freedom, that maximum flexibility, you get it in startups rather than big organizations. Probably at 7 years of experience or 8 years of experience, you can always go into a very big organization. But at the start of your career, go to startups. Startups are where you break your head. Startups are where you work for 12 hours or 14 hours productively every single day. And in startups is where you get a higher package at the start of your career. You also do get a MacBook. So I'm sitting around 4 MacBooks right now. So you can get multiple MacBooks that you want, or anything that you want, because startups pay a really good, a really high salary. But you have to be really good in terms of entering a startup. So for that, I would request you to learn during your second year or third year if you are inclined to learn in regards to IT. And one more fact for you in terms of the growth of cloud and DevOps. On the left side, you have the Gartner's Magic Quadrant. So Gartner Magic Quadrant tells you which are the cloud-based platforms that are on the leaders quadrant and which of them are on the visionaries quadrant, and what are some of these smaller cloud-based platforms as niche players. So if you see over here, we have Amazon Web Services on the top. In fact, Amazon Web Services for infrastructure and platform services have won this particular Gartner Magic Award, Gartner Magic Quadrant Award for the 11th consecutive year. From 2010, these guys have been winning the award for the best infrastructure and platform service. So there are so many use cases that I can cite for you. Everyone watches movies and Netflix, TV shows, right? So Netflix's entire infrastructure is on AWS. A lot of people know that we have Amazon Prime. Amazon Prime's entire infrastructure is on AWS. Whenever you get a new phone, you get Dropbox storage for like 50 gigs and so on. Dropbox is itself built over Amazon S3, which is one of the services of Amazon Web Services. Salesforce, a CRM-based platform, uses Amazon Web Services in the background. Elastic Cloud, which is an enterprise search engine, it uses Amazon Web Services in the background. So many financial institutions use Amazon Web Services in the background. So yes, you do have so many real-time industry use cases where we use a cloud-based platform in the background. And yes, I would say the market share of AWS is close to around 60, 62%, closely followed by Microsoft Azure with around 50, 54%. And then Google is like trying to grow up. So in terms of the search volume on Google for the space of DevOps, in the year 2014, the search volume was only this much. Search volume in the sense how many people type the word DevOps on Google. But in the year 2021, where we are right now, just see the search volume increase at an exponential rate because there are a lot of people who are upskilling themselves in the space of cloud and DevOps. There are a lot of people who are looking out for job opportunities in the space of cloud and DevOps. So it doesn't matter whether you are an EC engineer or whether you are a data engineer, data scientist, data analyst, software engineer, system administrators, test engineer, or network engineer, they all are encapsulated in the space of cloud and DevOps. So that's why, irrespective of whatever domain you're working in or whatever is your vertical, you need to also learn cloud and DevOps because we don't want people who are good at only one single stuff in the industry. We want people who are good at one single stuff, but also know the horizontal. So that means you got to be excellent at your vertical and know the horizontal on different technologies that you just explore at a particular level of depth. And you are able to compete with 2 to 3 years or 4 years or 5 years industry experience professionals right when you are graduated out of college. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and leave it to questions and answers. And any question and answer that you would like, anything for that matter, I would be more than happy to answer. Let's see if we have some in the chat. So anyone? Yep. Oh, cool. We have one question in the chat. Okay. So HP, heard about Kubernetes? What is it actually? And is it related to cloud computing? Okay. Okay. Good question. So for that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, HP, one more time. And this time I'm going to go ahead and open up a notepad. I'm going to go ahead and create a new notepad just for you. And I'm just going to take 5 minutes to explain to HP as to what Kubernetes and how it is tied to the cloud. So Kubernetes was a project that was out of Google. It was initially called as the Borg. So Kubernetes is nothing but a cluster which has a brain and nodes. The brain is your control plane, which is nothing but a set of virtual machines which have the components. I'll just leave it at that. I'll just leave it at components installed, which acts as the brain. And it could be in odd number because usually we have a cluster. That means cluster should be in coherence. So you will usually have 1 or 3 or 5 or 7 virtual machines, depending on how you want. And then the node is where your applications run. And the nodes are also VMs. You can have GPU or graphic processing unit based VMs. You can have CPU based VMs. You can have RAM intensive VMs, and so on. So that means now HP, where are the VMs running? The VMs are running at cloud. For Kubernetes, you can have your own on-premise data center installation. You can use cloud-based offerings like Elastic Kubernetes Service on AWS, Azure Kubernetes Service on Azure, Microsoft Azure, and Google Kubernetes Service or Google Kubernetes Engine on GKE, which is on Google Cloud Platform. And you have so many others. You have IBM platforms, Kubernetes, and so on. But we see a lot of people employ this, and at the same time, we also have Red Hat's product, which is OpenShift, which is built over Kubernetes. So at the end of the day, all I want HP, what I want you to remember is Kubernetes is nothing but a cluster where you have control plane and data plane or nodes, which are nothing but the control plane acts as your brain, and your data plane is where your application runs. So your control plane is nothing but a set of virtual machines. Your data plane or nodes are also a set of virtual machines. And these virtual machines are running in the cloud. And you can go ahead and use your on-premise infrastructure where you manage everything by yourself, or you can leverage cloud-based offerings where the control plane is managed by them and the data plane is managed by us. And then you have OpenShift, which is a separate product by Red Hat for Kubernetes. So I hope you got the idea. Good. Cool. Any other questions, guys? Anyone else? Anything that you guys want to ask? More than happy to answer. Anything in regards to the IT industry.
Akshay,
Yes.
can you tell in simple terms what is DevOps, what is Docker, what is Kubernetes to understand easily?
Okay. Okay. Cool. Why not? Okay. So let me put it this way. So let's start with DevOps, and then I'll tell you why Docker and Kubernetes came into the industry and why we need people in that space. So in terms of DevOps, everyone knows that it's developer plus operations, right? So let's say that a developer has his code in GitHub, and then we need to take it through a process, which is nothing but CI and CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment, and continuous delivery to your environments. And your environments could be dev, test or QA, stage, and prod. Production environment is where you see your live end users go ahead and access your application. So how do you take your developer's code, which is in GitHub, through a process to all of your environments? And these environments are in the cloud. So all of these environments are created on Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure or Google Cloud Platform and so on. So let's take a moment as to how we would do it for a Java application. So for a Java application, we would create a jar, and then we would go ahead and deploy that jar to your environments. That's one simple way of doing it. Or you could take a Java application, create a var, and deploy that var to a web server like Tomcat in all of your environments. Or you could take the Java application and create something called as a jar again, but then this time to make it consistent delivery or build once and ship many to all of your environments, we are going to build something called as a Docker image, which is nothing but your application code, your libraries, and how do you run your application. Okay. So I'll repeat it again. Docker image is nothing but your application code, your libraries, and how do you run your application. You use a Docker image to go ahead and deploy this Docker image to all of your environments. So Docker is nothing but containerization on the OS level. So what if I told you you have an operating system like Linux or Windows, and you go ahead and virtualize virtualize this operating system by using Docker. So it's operating system level virtualization to create something called as containers, where each and every container is isolated. And within that container is where your Docker image is running. And within that Docker image is your application. Very simple. So you go on an OS level, you virtualize the operating system, create something called as containers, and where each and every container is isolated. And within that container is where your Docker image is running. And within that Docker image is nothing but your application artifact. So Docker allows you to go ahead and do this philosophy, which is build once, ship many. So you build your application only once and you ship it to multiple environments where Docker is running. And where Kubernetes comes into play is where you take Docker to a cluster level. That's where Kubernetes comes into play. So Kubernetes is all about orchestration and scheduling. But what is it orchestrating? What is it scheduling? Your workloads or your applications. So that means Kubernetes is nothing but a cluster of virtual machines where you have the control plane and the data plane. And your data plane, which are your worker nodes, are having Docker installed into them. And then you take your application as a Docker image and you deploy your application to a Kubernetes cluster. So now, in terms of deploying it to the Kubernetes cluster, since it's an orchestrator and a scheduler, it takes care of how do I deploy it onto which node in the cluster, which node has enough CPU, which node has enough memory, and so on. So when you take Docker from a standalone, from a single environment to a clustered environment, you start using Kubernetes. So that's pretty much about DevOps, Docker, and Kubernetes. I'll just do a small recap so that it's more clear. So DevOps is developer plus operations, where a developer has his code in a source code repository like GitHub, takes it through a process of CI and CD, and then deploys it to different environments which are in the cloud. So you could take a Java application, create a jar, deploy that jar, or multiple different instances that I've given you over here. And Docker is nothing but it's containerization rather than virtualization, because it's done over the operating system. And you start running something called as containers. And within each and every container, you have a Docker image that is running. And within that Docker image is nothing but your Java application. And then Docker goes behind this philosophy as build once and ship many. So when you take Docker to a cluster level, where you don't have to worry about deploying your application to this particular node or to this particular node and so on, and you would like someone to take care of that for you, that's where Kubernetes comes into play. And Kubernetes is a project from Google. So, and it has been in this space in terms of the market, you have so many people who are upskilling themselves to learn about Kubernetes. It's not that easy because it has Docker as a prerequisite. So only when you learn Docker in depth, that's when you can go ahead and start learning about Kubernetes and understand every concept that comes with it. I would ask everyone to take a moment to learn. If you want to learn Kubernetes, I would ask you to learn Linux, Docker, Kubernetes. This is the track that I would ask you to take in terms of learning Kubernetes. If you directly go into K8s, you're not going to learn much. So you got to do it the right way. You got to do it from the basics. So Linux, Docker, and K8s. So I hope you got a decent idea about, what DevOps is all about. Even if you don't understand any of these terms, totally fine, guys. No worries. You can always contact me later. I'll give you a more detailed approach into how this works.
Thanks, Akshay.
So today's webinar is just about you guys understanding the seriousness of the space and why we need a lot of people. And I also told you the market scope in terms of the salaries and all that. That's the takeaway. That's the key takeaway. And also some of the things that I said in regards to learning one concept a day and spending more time for yourself to go through an amazing professional career based on your decisions to take much better care of your families. And everyone is in a different financial situation. I would just I would like all of you to go behind knowledge and get that money is worth in your pocket rather than going behind money. So did we get any other questions? Yeah, I think we did get some. Okay, awesome. So what coding language should we know to enter cloud computing domain? Zero. You don't need any coding language, Mohammed. Uh, you really don't need. But then I'll also tell you this. If you know a little bit of Python, you can automate some of the stuffs that are being done manually. But that's more inclined towards scripting rather than actual programming, So, but yes, Mohammed, there is no coding language as a prerequisite that you need to know to enter cloud computing. But like I said, if you know Golang or if you know Python or if you know a little bit of shell commands, you can automate some of the stuff that are being done manually. That's all. But it does not mean that you need to know a programming language. No. That's a good question because a lot of people do ask it. I have conducted more than 36 to 37 guest lectures till now, guys. Previously, I was doing it in person in that college. I used to interact with the students. And when I went to Chennai Institute of Technology in Kundratur back in Chennai, um, some of the students over there were from EC department, and they did ask, actually, I don't like programming. I don't want to do coding. So what are the other alternatives? So I suggested them to go ahead and learn about cloud and DevOps. And most of them have got placed in that domain. And that was back in 2018 when I did a guest lecture for third year and final year students. Okay, so yeah. So Dr. Rajat, he's asking, what is the path you suggest to learn Linux? So there is no specific path to learning Linux, Rajat. I would probably just say, install an Ubuntu system on your laptop or install CentOS on your laptop, and then just go ahead and execute all of the different commands. Learn to install a Linux flavored operating system, and while installing, you will know the BIOS settings, you will know the disk drive settings and all that. And then go ahead and execute multiple Linux commands. Look at the man pages for each and every Linux command. I'm a fan of doing things practically and learning. I don't want you to go through any course or, uh, probably just follow it verbatim, word for word, and then execute only the commands that the course resource person is executing. No, I want you guys to just go ahead and install a Linux operating system, see how it works, flash your pen drive, use a pen drive as a boot drive. I was working in a hardware shop for 6 months where I was just servicing computers, installing operating systems, setting up systems from scratch. That's what I was doing for 6 months. So I want all of you guys to learn it the practical way rather than going through any course, or I'm not going to give you a path. I'm just going to tell you, install a Linux operating system on your laptop, install it by yourself, go through a lot of Linux commands, go through the man pages of each and every Linux command. So if you do man ls, you're going to get the man page for the ls command. So that's the best way for you to learn Linux. And Ayush is asking, so where to start or what should be the initial step? Good question. If you want to enter the space of cloud and DevOps, the initial step is for you to understand a little bit of Linux, at least 1 hour of content on Linux. I want you to do the research by yourself. And then the second thing that I want you to do is, Ayush, I want you to understand as to how networking works. What is an IPv4 address? What is an IPv6 address? What is a subnet? How do you do subnetting? I want you to spend at least 2 hours to 3 hours on the networking aspects. And then I want you to prepare yourself for AWS Cloud Practitioner certifications content or Microsoft Azure's fundamental content. You can go for either of the fundamental exams because that's where you start. That's where you learn the basics. That's where you improve upon the basics. So for you to learn the basics, if you take 3 months, it's great. I love that you took 3 months to learn the basics because anything over the basics is only going to take you 1 more month or 1.5 months for you to easily grasp. So spend more time on the basics. So 1 hour on Linux, 2 to 3 hours on basics of networking, IP address, routing, and so on. And then spend at least 2 months learning the basics of a cloud-based platform, starting with AWS Cloud Practitioner or Microsoft Azure Fundamentals. I hope that answered your question. And then you can, like, once you have done this, it'll anyways take you 4.5 months to 5 months. Then you can contact me again. I'll set some more goals for you. I'll give you the tougher ones. Awesome. Cool. Thanks, man. Nothing comes easy in life. Do always remember that. Go through a lot of hardships, make mistakes, take impulsive decisions. Hard work is something that is rewarded always. I don't believe much in smart work and all that. It's all about just grinding yourself, being focused every single day uh, to go to where you want to go in your career. I was working from 2 o'clock in the afternoon to 4:30 in the morning the next day. That's my usual schedule that I was following for 2.5 years in my first organization. And that's when I did my certifications. I learned a lot. I used to just get the keys for the office, open up the door, open the shutter, sit under the AC, just switched on one light. And I used to study for 6 hours before the day started from 7 o'clock at night to 4 in the morning. So that was the schedule that I was on for 2.5 years. So think about it, 6 hours every day of productive studies for 2.5 years continuously. Think about where it would take you. Like I said, if you're over here when you're in college and the industry is somewhere over here, in order for you to bridge that gap, all you have to do is just spend more time. And the more time that you spend, you will come here. But at that same time, the industry is not going to sit here. The industry is always going to keep growing. So in that way, you can never catch up to where the industry is, but at least you can be better than other people out there. You can at least be better than the people out there. If all of you right now have the same set of skill sets on your resume, I'm going to reject everyone. But if each and every one of you takes the time to find out your purpose, my purpose is to deliver lectures. My purpose is to impact a crowd of people. My purpose is to teach and preach so that you guys get the exposure and you get the insight, you get the right salary so that you can take care of your families much better. That's my only purpose. Rather than thinking more about myself, I think about you guys. I think about how you could construct your career in such a way that you go ahead and do wonders in your career. I want each and every one of you to be the best you possibly can, because every human being born on this planet is much more in terms of potential than they possibly think that they can do. So if you think that you can go to level 100, I believe that you can go to level 200. I believe that you can go to level 500. If you start believing that, if you start trusting yourself, if you put in more money and time on yourself, man, you're going to do wonders. You're going to go great heights. You're going to go to the top of the Eiffel Tower and you're going to take a look at the entirety of Paris. And for that one moment, for that 5 seconds or 10 seconds, you're going to have that feeling, man, you did something great. So keep doing something that makes sense. Find out your strength and weakness. I usually do this when I sleep at night and I, stare at the ceiling and I think to myself, where was I 6 months back? Where I am right now? And what should I do for the next 6 months? So when I think like this, I know that if there is a progress from where I was before to where I am right now, I know that I'm doing something right. And then I put up my plans for the next 6 months and I try to knock out each and every goal that goes towards that plan. And at the end of the goal, like at the end of the plan, you have a milestone. And once you reach that milestone, you feel really good. I have written some really tough exams and I've felt really good about it because I have passed those exams. I have done it the right way. I have the entirety of knowledge so that I can share it with everyone. So do remember this. Always do a SWOT analysis: strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat. And once you do a SWOT analysis, you will understand more about yourself. So you know what? There are a lot of people who are waiting for guidance. There are a lot of people who are waiting for directions. What if you took a decision by yourself to do something? Rather than waiting for someone else to give you that direction or for someone else to give you that guidance, You are all under the guidance of your college professors. Your knowledge is limited to the guidance of your college professors. In terms of increasing that knowledge, you have to take the decisions to go and explore on by yourself about at least 10 other technologies or 10 other things in your space that make sense. Rather than following each and every word of your professor, ask questions to the professors. Make them nervous. Make them think. They haven't taught for so many years. There are so many colleges that I've gone to where the professor themselves have asked me, how do I get a pass percentage in Python? I just told the professor, you learn Python, then you teach Python. That's what I did. So I'm being very frank and very straight that if you guys as students don't ask the professor the why question, you are never gonna learn. Make the professor nervous so that they go back the next day, they search and they give you the answers. Always learning is mutual. You are not paying 1.2 lakhs to 1.3 lakhs just to go ahead and go to college, just to learn some subjects, just to verbatim on your exams and then go back home. That's not how college should be. College should be in such a way that the professors are in a space of fear every single day as to what Ritik would ask, as to what Atrey would ask, as to what Anis would ask. That's the feeling that you should have when you are studying in college. It should be mutual learning for both people, for both of us, like the professors as well as students. So just remember this. So next time, ask questions to professors. Okay. Let's do one or two more questions. So yeah, sure. HP, I will share my LinkedIn profile in a moment. I think I already have it open though. So just give me a moment. Let's see. There you go. I sent it to everyone. Okay, one more question from Abhishek. So since we have our placements coming up in a year, what learning goals should you set? Okay, cool. So if you are going for placements and you are, Abhishek, if you are attending for like IT or CSE related placements, I would ask you to be good at one programming language. It could be Java, C++, Python, Golang, whatever it may be, but be good at it. Don't put basics on your resume. I don't ever want to see basics on a resume, like basics of Java or basics of C++. That's stupidity. If you know Java, put you know Java. If you know core Java, put you know core Java. Don't put basics. Okay. So that's one thing I want you to remember. So learn one programming language if you are attending IT placements and all that. But on the side, learn about these nice skill sets like AI, ML, or data engineering, or cloud and DevOps, and so on. Invest money in yourself, Abhishek, to get some really nice courses on Udemy or Coursera or any other platform that makes sense. Udemy has a nice Black Friday sale, I believe, where you get courses for 360 or 400. Spending 1.3 lakhs for college just to get a degree, you can at least spend 300 to 400, to get some amazing courses on Udemy, which would be inclined towards the industry and for your career. Make sense? Anything else you want to know, Abhishek? Okay, cool. So Akash is like many will say that it's difficult to operate Linux on Mac. Is that true? Okay. Akash, why don't you create an AWS account? Why don't you do this research? Akash, why don't you create an AWS account as part of the free tier, right? And why don't you go ahead and launch a virtual machine of Amazon Linux operating system or Ubuntu operating system or CentOS operating system and so on, and then just go ahead and work with Linux. Connect to that virtual machine and use SSH to connect to the virtual machine, and then go ahead and just work with Linux-based commands rather than trying to operate Linux on a Mac and so on. Make sense? Okay, cool. Research about it, Akash. Go ahead and do it. Research about AWS account in terms of the free tier, and then any virtual machines that you can launch. Okay, so Dr. Rajat is asking one more question. So, what are the opportunities for research in terms of academic research on the cloud? So, okay, Dr. Rajat, I'm going to do this for you. So I'm going to show you one page, Rajat, and this one page is all about AWS solutions. This is what I call as academic research because it should always be inclined towards the specialty of or specific towards the domain of cloud and DevOps, or just the domain of cloud, but inclined towards different industries. So you can see over here in this particular page, I'll just zoom in a bit. So this is what I want, Dr. Rajat, I want you to take a look at. You have aerospace, you have agriculture, you have automotive, you have so many different domains, right? In terms of industries, right? So each and every industry has employed some architecture in the cloud that you could take a look at. So for example, if I just go to the education industry, you have OpenEdX on AWS. So OpenEdX is a e-learning platform, and it's built over the AWS platform. Plagiarism detection, this is something that I believe you do when you write journals and papers and so on, right? Paper presentations and so on. So they do have another reference architecture on the AWS cloud using machine learning with SageMaker. So what I would like you to do, I'm just going to paste this for you. So I'm just going to deselect this. I'm going to paste this for you. I want you, Dr. Rajat, to take a look at this. So you get a really good idea, about how the space of cloud in terms of research could be done on different industries. Does it make sense?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. Okay, so the next question. Okay, HP is asking. So HP, what's your full name, man? Anyways, okay. So what's your view on open source development? Should we learn tech stack and then create projects, or try some open source contributions while learning? Okay, so HP, did you take a look at a lot of LinkedIn posts in regards to open source contributions and so on? If you did, what I would say is you got to be really good on programming. You got to be, but yes, open source contribution also is like you can contribute documentation if you want to. So that's also there. But what I would suggest is, if you learn some programming languages in depth, you can create your own applications, you can create your own frameworks. So that's something that you do by yourself, and then go ahead and put it out as an open source contribution, and then put that on your profile. So what I would suggest, HP, what you should do is, you should concentrate on your office work, right? But on the side, you can do your open source contributions. So probably spend 1 hour or 2 hours every day to learn something new, to see where you could possibly contribute, whether it's on the documentation aspect or whether it's on the issues page of GitHub, and you are taking just one issue and you're fixing it. So it could be even that in terms of open source contribution. So that's something that I would like you to do 1 hour or 2 hours for yourself, if you're inclined towards doing that and you're more passionate towards doing that. But I would also suggest you to spend 8 hours a day for the office, 1 hour or 2 hours a day for yourself in terms of learning and upskilling and reskilling yourself, and then 1 or 2 hours a day doing open source contributions. You can do that while learning. You can also do that after you have learned, but choose 1 or 2 open source projects that you possibly think could have more contribution from your side, either in terms of documentation or code. So it's great. I mean, it's really good that you can do that. It's really great. So I have met people who have contributed to Red Hat's Keycloak project. I have seen people who have contributed to different operators in Kubernetes. So, all you have to do is just go ahead and study development really well. But yes, on the other hand, yes, you could also do a lot of documentation for open source projects. So yeah, it depends on what you want to do. But yeah, you can do that while learning. You can also do that even when you're in the office. I always believe that you stick to a 40-hour schedule and you spend 2 hours for yourself, and then you spend 2 hours doing something that you love. For me, it is recording courses, and then I study for 2 hours, inclined towards any certification or any new technology in the market. That's how I stay ahead. Yes, Rajat, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks so much for replying to all those questions. I
Yeah.
just looked at the link which you gave, and that kind of triggered a question.
Yeah.
So, in the electronics industry, we end up paying a lot of money for certain software.
Mhm.
Okay, so I was wondering if this cloud can come in a way where we can cut down that cost drastically. And typically, every other lab which we try to set up, we try to install or purchase and then have around 40 to 50 PCs per lab. And that is another thing which I was thinking: can we cut down this using this infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service? Especially from the point of view of educational institution, and also given what has happened in the last 1 to 2 years with the huge lockdowns, we don't have students who are even using so much of the infrastructure which we have set up by spending literally crores of money. So going
Yeah.
forward, do you have any suggestions on these lines?
Yeah, of course, of course. So let's say when it comes to, I just take an example from the IT side of things, because we do have switches, we have routers, we have spent a lot of money to set up the college infrastructure, right? So what if you took all of them to the cloud? What if uh, rather just close the doors for your labs and you set up systems in the cloud? So you use an AWS account for one department, you use another AWS account for another department. You give access to all of your students as part of IAM users for them to launch virtual machines. But in terms of the softwares that you are using, if I can know the exact software, whether it's in terms of license that you are purchasing that software, or whether it's a software that you can directly install and just give access to your students. In that way, what I would suggest is, if it's a licensed based software, then you have no other way but to still continue purchasing that license, even if you are in the cloud, right? But if it's basic software like Cisco Packet Tracer or any other software that you can install onto a machine, you can always do that by launching a machine in the cloud. You can launch Windows machines, you can launch Linux machines. And you know what? The price per hour is very less if you go for long-term savings. And you could track your entire costs of all of your accounts and get to know the department costs in terms of dollars per month. And then you can also do cost optimization over that. And you can also do granular controls in such a way that none of your students are launching big instances in terms of higher capacities, but only the capacities that you are mentioning. So you can do a lot of things when it comes to the cloud, and you could just change your entire educational infrastructure from closing your doors to the labs to moving everything to the cloud. And you may have a lot of applications, right? So colleges like BMS, I'm pretty sure you have a lot of internal applications. You can take a look at how you can migrate those internal applications to another separate account, which could be called as BMS internal apps. And you could have all of your internal applications running in different probably in a region that is closer to you, which is Mumbai. Mumbai is, yeah, we also have Hyderabad that is coming up next year. It's still not at setup though. But yeah, that's also something that you could possibly do. So in that way, you start only paying for ongoing expenditure rather than capital expenditure.
Okay. Even for the licensed software, can we not have a few colleges which will come together and then have purchase a set of licenses which will be floating, and then people can
Of
kind of
course,
use
yeah,
them?
because at the end of the day, what you have to see is whether AWS already has an machine image for that particular application that you're talking about, or if it doesn't, then you can always launch a machine and install it and then do the licensing on it. So you can go with the infrastructure as a service based model. But if AWS already has that as an Amazon machine image, you can launch that and then use your existing licenses over there. That's also possible. But yes, you can purchase a set of licenses and you can ask your students to, probably go in batches and use that. And I'll leave that to you. But yes, it's possible.
Okay, okay. Thanks so much. Thank you.
And if suppose that particular software does require dedicated underlying hardware, where the underlying hardware should not be shared in the data center with anyone else, yes, AWS also has dedicated instances and dedicated hosts, which are a little bit more pricey. But then yes, it's possible to also do that. And you can have all of your databases. That's the fun fact. You have a PC, you install database on every system, and then you ask all of your students to work with MySQL commands and all that. Instead of that, you just launch one database instance in the cloud, just give them the credentials to the endpoint, and then they will be able to directly interact with that from their laptops sitting in their houses. That's what I would do. I would set up a cloud infrastructure for everyone to learn IT from home.
Rightly told, Akshay, as already we are, S. Narayan Center is working on cloud computing center of excellence. They are going to
Mhm.
propose no data center solution to academic institutions. Definitely in a few days, they are going to interact with you through the center for no data center solutions to various academic institutions. As you
Mhm.
rightly told, there is so much of investment, capex and opex. They don't have idea how to save that money. Okay,
Yeah,
so, but the other thing is the problem with the expertise.
yeah,
So
yeah,
there are many myths. Our data is secured. Is it
yeah, of course.
confidential? There are many myths still. The people are not so confident about cloud. Some
Yeah.
a few days back, I spoke to one guy from one particular company, a startup it is. When I
Mhm.
asked him to why can't you deploy your entire infrastructure to cloud? So why can't
Mhm.
you deploy your application to the cloud? He started saying about all my data is so sensitive, data is
Yeah,
confidential. I don't want to put it in, give it to the third party.
yeah,
So immediately I asked him, are you not using Gmail? He said,
yeah.
yes, I'm using Gmail. Gmail is, Google is hacking your mail account. Google is
Yeah.
accessing your mails. I asked that. Still, he told, yes, it requires some expertise, Akshay.
Yeah, of course, the transition of moving to the cloud itself involves a lot of people who work in the security domain. So we need really good people who are working on the security aspect. So let me just give you one small example, SRK. You can think about this, and all of you students can also think about this. Let me just open up one more notepad. So what if, let's say that you would like to give access to your students to work with some applications, right? So let's say that the virtual machines which are hosting that application are in a private network. Let's say even the databases are in a private network. Let's say that there is only one jump box which is in the public network. And if suppose all of your students need to access the entire AWS account, or let's say any of the virtual machines in the AWS account, or the databases in the AWS account, we would go ahead and create something called as a client VPN. And this client VPN will be installed on all of the students' laptops. They would be given specific credentials with two-factor authentication using OTP or Duo or Google Authenticator. And only then they will be able to connect to the AWS account or whatever is in that AWS account. So in this way, your data always remains private until any one of your students tamper the data, which of course they want. So everything will be private. Only the client VPN will be installed onto the students' laptops, and then they would go on to access the entire infrastructure in the cloud. So in this way, you have the best security practices. So no one from the outside can access until they are connected to your network, and people who are connected to your network will only be your students. And yeah, obviously you could go ahead and do a non-disclosure agreement with the students in such a way that they don't share their credentials with anyone. And even if their mobile phone is lost, no one will still know the username and password of that particular student. So in that way, you have multiple layers of security so that once they cross that multiple layers of security, they can access any resource in the AWS account and so on. Yes, it's a long-term goal. It's a little difficult to set up, but it's a one-time setup. And when you do it for the first time, it's really secure. Just a small idea into how secure you can make your cloud infrastructure. Yeah.
We will do that, Akshay. We'll work on that. Thank you. Thank you, Rajat, for asking very good question. Even Rajat and me, we discussed it some time back. Yes,
Okay.
Rajat. Thank you, Akshay. Is there any questions, friends, students?
I don't see any in the chat. I think we answered the last one. So yeah, HP is Harsh Parihar. Okay, cool.
So in continuation this, my dear students, my dear friends, we are planning to conduct a 10-hour workshop on the various practices of AWS. It is directly to AWS Cloud Practitioner Certification Exam, as Akshay rightly discussed about that in the discussion. So we are going to start from first week of September. It is going to start from 3rd or 4th September. It's in the morning time. If Akshay says, Akshay agree for that. It is not on weekends and it is every day. It is like every day 2 hours per day. It starts at 10 a.m., 10 to 12 every day for 5 days, 5 into 2, 10 hours. So we are going to learn hands-on, complete hands-on workshop. For that, you are going to get the poster by end of the day or by tomorrow, by weekend. So do register for that and do attend the hands-on workshop and learn the technology, AWS Cloud Practitioner Certification Exam. So who are interested, who want to take Cloud Practitioner exam, so it is recommended you should attend that workshop so that you can take the certification exam. Thank you so much, Akshay, for accepting our webinar request. Thank you so much for interacting with our
Sure.
students.
Yeah.
Many students are registered, I don't know, few students only attended. We'll see, we'll make sure that who are registering for the workshop, they are all attending for the workshop.
Sure, SRK. And yeah, just think to yourself that, once you finish the workshop, don't directly go into the exam. Uh, but yes, you have to do a lot more practice. You have to
Yes,
go
yes.
through practice tests. And anyways, in the workshop, you will get to know on day one as to what are all the 7 steps that you got to do in terms of working for a certification exam. And I'll tell you that there is a huge market worth for that, and you would have seen the figures. I gave you the details. I just want you to go back and think as to whether you actually want to do it. And you know what? In terms of education, don't think. Learn it and then think where you can use it. Don't think whether you have to learn something or not. Just directly deep dive in, and then you can think about where you could possibly use it. Because knowledge is very important. Knowledge is wealth. So when you do filter to a knowledge, it's not knowledge. So if you do a filter in your mind as to whether I should learn this or whether I should learn that, learn it and then think. That's what I would say. With that, I'll end my talk. If there are any other questions, feel free to reach out through SRK or on LinkedIn. You can just ping me. Whenever I'm free, I'll give a response for sure. Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you. Thank you, Akshay. Thanks to all the participants who attended today interaction. Now I have given my center email ID in the chat window. Feel free to mail to BS Narayan Center. You want to learn anything, so don't stop learning. So here it is stops growing. Okay. So never stop learning. For when we stop learning, we stop growing. So keep learning. Learning keeps you active. Learning keeps you happy. So thank you one and all. Thank you, Akshay. Thank you so much. And
Thank
I'm
you,
going
guys.
to
Take care.
upload this on YouTube channel also, Akshay, with your permission. Yeah, thank you.
Do it,
Thank you
do
so
it.
much.
Why not? Yeah,
Yeah,
just do
I'll
it.
do
Yeah,
it. I'll do it by the end of the day.
sure. Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Akshay.
you, SRK.
Thank you.
Take
Thank
care.
you so much.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Bye bye.
Questions?